Surrender, surrendering into newness. I remember the first time I was told I had to surrender my my will and my life over to something greater than I was. It was like, no, I need control. If I don't keep control, everything will fall apart. And you know what? Everything did fall apart. And it's like that the Japanese um yeah, process of putting things back together with gold or silver, and it looks even more beautiful afterwards. Because after the life fell apart, and trusting, even though at the time the only thing I could surrender to was a birch tree in my backyard as my higher power, everything came back together in such a different way. It looks so different than what it looked like at that time. And it's incredible. So what is surrender? I think in Sandy's reading by Richard Rohr, he tells you all the things that it is not. What is that? It's not capitulating. It's not becoming a puppet. It's not stopping everything. It's what it is opening ourselves up. It's opening ourselves up to that trust in spirit, that everything is working for our highest good. And when we get all of the emotional and intellectual stuff that that just keeps it from flowing into our lives to that highest extent that it can, or as Bob put in the chat, if you were on a little bit ago, he said, surrender your plans to God's editing. And it's like, yes, yes. And there's a part of that that says, no, no, part of me, no, no, I need to be the editor. It's like, no. That's why when someone writes these incredible books, there's someone else who does the editing because they can take a look at it from a different perspective than what we are in that moment. And what we find is when we put our trust into external things around us, we become disillusioned, we become we're out of alignment. We're just out of alignment with our true self. We're out of alignment with that highest and greatest expression of ourselves. Because as so many have said, you can have a fortune one day and it can be gone the next. And when that's what you have your trust in, when that's what you have your faith in, then your faith disappears. Your anchor is gone. Your pole star is not there anymore. And Ernest Holmes puts it in the book Living the Science of Mind, which is a collection of essays and talks that Ernest Holmes gave. And in general, the stories, but the articles in there are a little easier to read because he was reaching out directly to an audience at the time when he either wrote these or talks that he gave. But there's one at the very back of that that's called The Great Surrender. That article, it's a number of pages. It's a great one to read, especially in this time of the winter solstice coming. But what he says is that he was talking about Jesus, and he says he is not saying that the divine will imposes suffering upon us, but rather that when we fail to live in accord with the divine, we bring suffering to ourselves. And the Buddhist tradition is, suffering is a human condition, and the more we attach ourselves to something, the more suffering we will feel. So, what is it that we're talking about here? Well, it's being open and willing to surrender, and surrender requires that. If we're going to live in this flow, it means that we need to be open and willing. We need to be letting our resistance, lay it aside. We need to come out of our comfort zone, step out of our box, step out into the newness. And there's a meditation that I did one time. The first time this happened to me, it scared the heck out of me. It was a guided meditation at a retreat that I was at, and they had us go up this ladder. And when I got to the ladder, I walked into this room. Well, I couldn't even tell it was a room. I couldn't tell that there were walls. I couldn't tell anything. It was just complete blank white. And all of a sudden it was, I came out of it, and one of the people who was there, as guides and stuff, it's like, "Are you okay?" Because I'm like breaking out in a sweat and everything, and it's like, I didn't see anything. I just didn't see anything. And they said, "Oh, that is so good." And I'm like, "Good. I want to see what it's going to be. I want to see." And it's like, no, no, that means you're totally open. You're open and you're willing to allow whatever to flow in. I didn't feel like it at the time, but guess what? It did. It worked for me because as my life crumbled around me, I was able to let all of that debris, let it go back into what we say sometimes, the native nothingness from which it came. Let it go back into the universe. Let it go back and be recycled and cleansed or whatever it is. And I could allow so many things to happen that I never would have allowed to. So if we are feeling that disconnect, we're likely not cooperating with the divine process, because it does require trust and faith in that process. And you may not see the end result. You may not know what it looks like. But if we pay attention, typically you can feel that something is emerging, that there's something there waiting to come into manifestation, waiting to change, something greater. It's kind of like I liken it to like a rose when it's a bud, and you sit there and you watch it, and you walk by it every day, and you know that at some point in time you're going to either, if you're lucky, you'll get to see the progression. But generally what happens is one day it's a little bud, and the next day you've got this beautiful flower. And that's what we feel. That's what we are feeling. And if we hold on to that which is constraining us, hold on to the pain that we know because it's familiar with us. We're familiar with that because the unknown is so much scarier, because at least I know what my monsters are right here, right now, in this moment. I don't know what might be out there waiting for me. And when we do let go, if I do let go with it, then oh my God, I might be held accountable. I might be responsible for something. Right now, I can, especially if I'm in that victim mindset, I can sit there and I can blame everything. I can blame the government. I can blame the weather. I can blame, my neighbor. I can blame I tripped and that rug jumped out and got in my way. Whatever it is, I can sit there and not have to take responsibility. And I may have to think in a new way. Oh my gosh, how scary is that? When you're on the other side of it, it's really scary. It's very scary. So when we start to become aware of some of the stories that we tell ourselves, we become aware of how we tell them, what voice are we using, and when are we telling those stories. What we can do is we can start to change that story. We can change the perspective of it. We can move it to look at it from a different angle. And then we can mentally prepare ourselves to be ready for this growth and this expansion, this surrendering into newness. There's an author, Gregory Williams, who wrote the book Driven Resilience. And he says, on the other side of a storm is the strength that comes from having navigated through it. Raise your sail and begin. And that's what we're talking about today is raise our sail and begin this incredible journey of surrendering into the newness. And doing that, we stay open at the top. And what do we mean by, I've heard that term ever since I came into this teaching, 20 some years ago. And what does it mean to stay open at the top? Well, from the perspective I had at that time, it means all of you guys up there who run this organization, you need to be open so that people like me can be whatever, it's someone else needed to be. And what it means is what we really mean is it's not an organizational thing, it's an individual thing that we live consciously in the space of infinite possibilities. We live consciously in the space of infinite possibilities. And if you've ever seen the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? It was very popular in the early 2000s. There's a scene where the main character is walking through a park and there's a young man playing basketball, and he turns around and starts talking to her about infinite possibilities. And all of a sudden, you see on this basketball court, all these basketballs bouncing at different heights. They're bouncing to different heights. There's some of them you can see better than others. Some are going fast, some are going slow, some are just, and she's like overwhelmed with all of the basketballs that are bouncing. And he tells her, once you pick one, once you pick that, once you surrender into that newness, there's only one basketball. There's the one path. And when you trust and when you're open, you know exactly which way to go. So when we're in this space, we don't want to see ceilings, we don't want to see walls, and we don't want to see floors because they'll hold us back. Now, am I saying to sit there and in this reality, little r reality that we live in, to just, no holds barred, just throw everything to the wind? I know I'm going to be a millionaire. I'll just go out and do whatever. No, we still have human, this human environment to live into, but it's how we perceive. It's how we perceive the boundaries that are set. Are they permanent? Are they unmovable? Can we know and affirm that we can push through and pass them? Just get past them. And there are spiritual practices that can help us release to allow more spirit in. Or as Sandy read, both in our meditation this morning, she read it, and then it was one of the readings today. So it's very important because it showed up for me to say today too, Sandy. So this is a theme here, guys. We must be willing to let go of the life we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. That's Joseph Campbell speaking. So two of the spiritual practices that can really help us through this is affirmative prayer or spiritual mind treatment that we talk about, that is a basis for our entire teaching, and the spiritual practice of visioning, which is another foundation block of this teaching. Because when we do visioning, what we do is we open ourselves up to go beyond what it is our imagination can take us to. We open ourselves up to what is beyond that. What is that? What is that expression of spirit as the highest expression of itself as my life? What is trying to express itself? And when we use these, it helps us to bring into our physical experience everything that's needed to accomplish that highest expression. And the thing that can constrict that can divert that can change what it is that is unfolding for us is our own limitations. So as we focus on the newness, as we focus on and open ourselves up and surrender into that newness, anything that doesn't serve that highest good collapses. And what I didn't know, years, decades before I found this teaching was that that's what I was opening myself up to when I finally allowed myself to surrender. I knew there was something greater, or at least the people around me could see it. I couldn't see it in the moment, but the people around me could see it. And when I let go and I focused and I allowed all of that to fall down around me, there was space for the new to come in. There was space for this calling that I didn't even know I'd had, that I had denied my entire life. And it took me a while to get to this point, even because guess what? All of that stuff all of those things, the domestication, the agreements that I had made, the things I had been told that I couldn't, I shouldn't, I'm not, still kept coming in there, and it just kept time to let go over and over and over again. Is there still more to let go? You betcha. You betcha. There is. As a spiritual guru advisor that I had at one point in time told me, take everything you know right now, Jackie, every morning and put it in your hand. And put your hand out and allow the wind to blow it all away. And being the skeptic engineer kind of person, well, what if there's no wind? Just when you bring it to your mouth and you go, you blow it away. Just blow it away. Just let it go because there's something new. There's something always new. And just go with that. Go with that newness. And do it from that perspective of not fear, but do it from that perspective of love of myself, of love, of all of humanity, understanding oneness and what that means on a very large scale. That web that we live in is not sticky and obtrusive unless we make it that way. What it means is I understand that whatever I do in this little part of my web has an effect all the way across it. Because if you've ever watched a spider that has a nice big web, a fly can land on the complete opposite side of that web, and that spider makes a beeline, knows exactly that the fly has been caught by the web. And so I'm not saying that we get caught by the web. What I'm saying is we affect the web. We affect it every day of our lives with every decision we make. So there's a freedom. There's a freedom that we have when we focus on the newness, when we surrender into the newness. And if the global theme this month for CSL is talking about shedding our skin, and the snake is the animal that runs through all of it. And what happens with a snake when they shed their skin? They have to wiggle and wriggle. They don't have hands to just rip it off. They have to wiggle out of it. And when they do, they leave it all behind. How many kids? Well, I had 3 boys who were very curious. So how many snake skins were in my house? You know, because we find it intriguing. But the snake is free now. It's free to move on. It's bigger. It's a greater expression of itself. It's a greater expression of the divine. Even if you don't like snakes, they're expressions of the divine too. They just do what snakes do. So we burst through that. We can burst out of our old skin and we can go into this greater reality, this bigger reality, this greater expression of ourselves as love, as peace, of joy. But we must be willing to let go of the life we planned so that we have room for the life that is waiting for us. So we can walk into that. And so there's a place in nature where you can in an allegorical way look at this surrendering into newness. And that is looking at tree rings. Every ring when you cut a tree down or bore into it, if it's an older tree and you want to let it live, you can bore into it. And every line is a new year of life. And so every line shows you that transition of what was into what is to be. And so like a tree, because what a tree will learn, it will learn that how to survive in the way. I mean, there was my son and daughter-in-law and I and my grandson were walking taking a walk out in the woods over Thanksgiving, and there was this one tree that looked like it was about to fall. It was at a very sharp, I mean, it was like, gee, should we walk under that? And you could see the roots that's just the way the tree had grown, because that was the way the wind was coming down the hill that it was at the bottom of. And so it was bent over because it was just easier for it to live rather than trying to resist the wind for its entire life. It started growing at a curve so that the wind could just blow over top of it. It surrendered into the newness every year. It just started growing more and more curved like that. It was in the flow. But when we think of ourselves like that, what happens is as we let that which no longer is serving us, if another way that we can say that, to just crumble to the ground, we allow our wisdom to take us into that next greater yet to be. Because we don't lose the wisdom of what we found there, of what we experienced. We don't need to lose that wisdom. We just need to lose all the stuff that goes with it. And so we let that go, and then our wisdom takes us into that greater yet to be, that greater expression of ourselves. And we become wiser and smarter. We become more flexible, and we're ready to take that step into the newness. And we can experience life and livingness with a greater openness, with a greater willingness to be that greater expression. And we gain the knowledge and the wisdom as the knowledge turns into the wisdom as we allow this to happen, and it sharpens us and expands our consciousness. Now we're in a time of the year, December. There's so many different celebrations this particular month. And Hanukkah will be starting next Sunday evening for 8 days. And depending on which story you go with, because there's a number of different ways to tell the story, but basically what it was is that there was a Jewish temple that was under siege, had been taken away. They were trying to recover, take the temple back. They had 1 day's worth of oil to keep the candle, the flame burning. But they knew that they would not receive help for it would take longer than a day. And that oil lasted for 8 days. It kept the flame going for 8 days. When reinforcements came, or again, whichever story, and things came back into, they were back into their temple. They had it back. They were able to renew it. And so now Hanukkah is a celebration of light. It's a celebration of spiritual renewal. It's a celebration of that greater expression of ourselves. And Christmas is coming. You have to, if you're in the Christian tradition, or about it, there's all these different characters in the Christmas story, Mary and Joseph and the Magi. And when you think about any one of them, Think about Mary. If you go with the story that's there, is like, here you are betrothed to someone, and in a time when it was a big no-no to have babies without being married, she comes up pregnant. So she's stepping into a newness herself and going with the faith. And think of Joseph, who went ahead and married this woman who he was also stepping into newness. He could have left at any time. He could have said no, and no one in society would have been upset with him. There would have been, it would have been completely okay for him to say, no, I'm not going to take her now. But just think about it. And the Magi, they see a star in the sky, and they all went ahead and followed that star. They followed what was coming to them. They followed the call. And what did they find at the end of that? When they got to the end of that, they found the Christ consciousness. And in our tradition, in the tradition of New Thought and in Science of Mind, what we're celebrating at Christmas is the birth of the Christ consciousness within each and every one of us. And so what we're talking about here is surrendering into the newness, is allowing that newer expression, that greater expression of that consciousness to allow it, not for us to just become that, to allow it to emerge from us, because it's already there. We already have it. And let's also talk about the winter solstice, which is coming up. It's the darkest day of the year. The darkest day of the year. This Colombian couple that I was talking about last week, they live close to the equator. They don't see the days changing like we do, especially even more so than than I do in Virginia, up in upstate New York. The change is even greater. And what happens? We have the darkest day of the year on the winter solstice, and then what happens after that? The light returns. The next day, there's more light than there was on the solstice. We don't necessarily recognize that, because it's not like, suddenly you have 3 hours more of light. It's a gradual change, but it's there. And that too is surrendering into the newness. It's time for us to go inside and look at, if I'm living in my comfort zone, or I feel this discontent, this disgruntled part of me. What is it? What is it that is trying to emerge? Because what we're feeling is something trying to emerge. What we're feeling is that greater expression of ourselves, waiting to come more fully present in our lives. So when we lean into newness, when we challenge our fears, when we push beyond our self-imposed limitations, we can find this greater expression. We can become aware of and let go of the baggage that's holding us in that moment. We can get a mindset of unlimited possibilities. We can take that walk in the park and see all those basketballs bouncing. And when we use tools like visioning and spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer, what we can do is we can either choose to pick a basketball, or we can allow that basketball, which is that greater expression of ourselves, to be the one that we see. So have curiosity and wonderment. Allow truth and the mystery of life to enlighten us, to enliven our lives. It's a mystery. It's a mystery. And just let it unfold for each and every one of us. Follow the signs and our spiritual practices that we have. And again, visioning and spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer are the two most powerful, but there's also the meditation, there's contemplation, there is and I'll put the plug in right now, working with this with a practitioner. Working with a practitioner to help bring that clarity because they we are all trained to know that spiritual magnificence that you already are. And we aren't going to tell you because we don't know how to get rid of anything that keeps you from shining your brightest light. But we sure as heck can hold that light for you and guide you to find out what it is. Give you some questions to think about. Give you, ways to unleash and unlock what's already inside of you. So when we lean into that spirit, when we lean into the newness and lean into what spirit has to offer, life changes great. It changes dramatically. So my challenge this week for each and every, myself included, is to listen to the stories that I tell myself in particular. Listen to those stories. How often do I repeat them? How often do you repeat them? How often does it come up? And what voice are you using when you do it? Are you using the voice of curiosity, or are you using the voice of I'm a victim, there's nothing I can do about this, or anywhere in between? And then ask, how can I rephrase that or relook at this story? And this is where working with a practitioner will really help you. How can I interpret it? And how can I interrupt it? How can I interrupt this story? Well, some of the questions you can ask you, well, one of my favorites is, well, that's really interesting. And the truth I know is, and speak my truth, no matter how difficult it is for me to say it out loud, because I may not fully believe it. In my humanness, I may not fully believe it. How can I, or isn't that interesting? And the truth I know is. Another question to ask that really helps is, what's mine to learn in this situation? Because anything we're experiencing in this human condition is an effect. So is there something for me to learn about this, to create that wisdom, to get the knowledge that will turn into wisdom for us? Another question is, what's mine to do? What's mine to do? And we can just surrender into newness in that moment. Because when we do, we help ourselves to excel. We help ourselves move into that greater yet to be. We can reach higher heights. We can have a deeper understanding and wisdom and knowledge and feeling of life itself. And when you do it, you give permission to others to do that, to be that. And you become a role model for yourself and everyone around you. So I invite you to, if there's a better word for you than challenge, I invite you to take this on this week and pay attention to the stories you are saying to yourself or saying to others, because sometimes they just come out. Because when I say it to others, I want to, make sure that I sound good, right? So what's that story? What's the story? What voice am I using? How often do I repeat it? What's mine to learn? What is mine to do? Well, that's really interesting. And the truth I know about myself is the complete opposite of whatever story I'm telling me that's constricting me. And so remember, Hanukkah, Christmas, winter solstice, it's all there to help us go inside, to honor and celebrate the truth of ourselves. As what I really like, one of the many things I learned from Dr. Trish was what I am versus who I am. And what I am is I am light, I am love, I am beauty, I am that Christ consciousness. wanting to more fully and freely express myself as my who. So enjoy this week. Thank you for being here today.